Today in higher learning, in recent years, as the cost of a college education has increased, policymakers have focused on student loan default rates as a way of tracking the challenges facing borrowers. But a new study shows the growing number of borrowers facing delinquency is a major source of concern. Here to talk about it is Peter Kerwin from the Rhode Island Higher Education Assistance Authority. Good morning.
Good morning, Courtney.
So there's a difference between default and delinquency. I didn't know there was. They're not the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, in general, you go into delinquency if you fail to make a payment on a student loan within 60 days of the due date. Default is if you are in delinquency for over 270 days for a regular loan or 360 days for a federally held loan by the U.S. Department of Ed. So that's when that's the more serious, the default. And obviously with default, that has significant impacts on your credit rating down the line. It can really damage a student's financial future. So the federal government's kind of focused on that default rate as something that they look at. They look at every school's default rate to make sure that they don't have policies that are putting students at risk. And if a school has a high default rate, the federal government will sometimes step in and sanction them or have fines. So it's an important issue. But what this report did was realize that, we're missing delinquency, and that's just as important. In fact, for every borrower who goes into default, you've got two who experience delinquency at some point during their life as a student. And that's important to look at because, delinquency can also impact your credit rating. It's not going to leave the mark that a default would, but it's still something that can bring down your credit score. So what the report found was about 37% of all students in the 2005 cohort, which was the group that they looked at, 37% of those students actually got through the process, paid off their loans in a timely way, no problems. There was another 26% which had to use some of the different repayment options there. 23% that used some of the repayment tools, some of the other options that are offered. And then there was 26% which went into delinquency for some period, but then eventually found out that, there are repayment options that can slow down my loan terms or improve things. They got into those programs and then they worked it out and avoided, default. And then there was a full 15% which experienced default. So those were the numbers, how they broke down. And it shows kind of, I think, an important experience for policymakers to look at and realize we've got to do something about those students going into delinquency.
Absolutely. And you said there's policies for them out there. So what are the repayment tools or options students can use who are falling into that percentage?
Well, the one good thing about federal loans is they offer a lot of different repayment options. The standard loan is 10 years. You pay it back. It's a pretty high monthly rate, but the interest rate is low. You can extend out the term of the loan if you want to. That's one option. You're going to pay a little more in interest, obviously, but it gives you more time to pay it back. There are also different options where if you go into certain career areas, they'll forgive part or all of that loan. So the key is for students really to understand what are the terms of the different loans. Make sure that with federal loans you're maxing out on those because those usually have the most generous repayment options to help you out. So it's just a matter of knowing your options, doing what's best.
Great information, and we'll have all of that on our website. Lots of tips for you out there who may be experiencing that. And thanks, Peter. For more information on college bound, just head to foxprovidence.com.